The battlefield had long been dominated by the invincible armada of the Dominion, a vast, technologically superior empire that had conquered entire sectors without breaking a sweat. Their warships, bristling with energy weapons and reinforced with nearly impervious shielding, had turned every engagement into a one-sided slaughter. No species had stood against them for more than a few months before crumbling under their relentless advance. To challenge them was suicide. To resist was futile. And so, system after system, world after world, fell to their unchallenged might. But then, something unexpected happened. It began in the Kelrath expanse, where the Dominion fleet had just eradicated the last remnants of a rebel faction. They were preparing to move on to their next target, their confidence unshaken, their victory all but assured. The fleet, led by the Dreadnought-class flagship Ravager of Light, carried enough firepower to obliterate an entire planet in minutes. Its escort of cruisers and destroyers formed an impenetrable wall of firepower. The Dominion fleet had never lost. They had never even suffered a significant setback. Their supremacy was absolute. That was until the Terran Battleship arrived. At first, Dominion sensors barely registered the ship. A single vessel, alone, drifting into the sector like an insect before a storm. The Dominion commanders scoffed. They had seen desperate fools before. Isolated ships sent in a last futile effort to disrupt their conquest. None had ever made a difference. None had ever survived. But something about this ship was different. It was massive, far larger than anything the Dominion had encountered from human forces before. Its dark, angular hull seemed to absorb the void around it, rendering it an ominous specter against the backdrop of space. Where Dominion ships gleamed with polished alloys and intricate design, this one was brutal and utilitarian. No unnecessary ornamentation, no wasted surface. It was built for one thing: war. The Dominion, fleet's commander, High Lord Varkon, ordered a standard approach. Scan the ship, hail it, demand its surrender. The results confused him. Its energy readings were unstable, unreadable even. Attempts to communicate were met with silence. And then, without warning, it began to move. Slowly at first, as if testing the waters, the Terran battleship glided forward. Dominion ships closed in, weapons locked, ready to eliminate the intruder in a single barrage. It should have been over in seconds. The Dominion's plasma lances and particle beams had annihilated entire flotillas with a single coordinated strike. A single ship, no matter how large, stood no chance. The order was given. Fire. Blinding beams of energy lanced across the void, striking the battleship dead center. The force of the impact sent ripples across its thick hull. Explosions erupted along its surface. And yet, when the blinding light faded, the ship remained. Damaged, yes, but still there. And then something horrifying happened. It fired back. Deep, thunderous vibration pulsed through the Dominion fleet as the Terran ship's weapons came to life. Not energy-based like the Dominion's, not precision-focused, but raw, unrelenting kinetic devastation. Gigantic mass drivers roared, launching hyper-accelerated tungsten slugs the size of city blocks. They struck Dominion ships with unimaginable force, piercing through shields like paper, tearing through hulls as if they were nothing more than brittle glass. One of the Dominion's cruisers was the first to fall. A single shot from the battleship's forward cannon struck it amidships, bypassing its defensive matrix entirely. The impact shattered the ship in two, sending molten debris spiraling into the void. Before the Dominion could react, another shot followed, then another. Each one found its mark. Each one delivered untold destruction. Panic began to spread. This wasn't how battles were supposed to go. The Dominion had never faced an enemy that could resist their technology, let alone overpower it. And yet this lone Terran battleship was doing just that. Its thick armor absorbed hit after hit. Its return fire was relentless, unerring, devastating. High Lord Varkon barked orders, demanding that his fleet adjust its tactics: close-range engagements, concentrated fire, strategic positioning. But nothing worked. The Terran ship adapted, faster than they did. It shifted its shields dynamically, reinforcing weak points on the fly. Its weapons didn't rely on energy outputs that could be drained or neutralized. It didn't need to recharge between shots. It was a relentless war, machine built for destruction on a scale the Dominion had never imagined. Then came the boarding attempt, a desperate gamble. If they couldn't destroy the battleship from the outside, they would take it from within. Squads of elite Dominion shock troopers, each clad in near-impervious exo-armor, launched towards the battleship, breaching its hull in a coordinated strike. What they found inside, however, was something they had not expected. It was empty, or so it seemed. The corridors were dark, silent, eerily devoid of any crew. No resistance met their advance. No defenders blocked their path. It was as if the ship was a ghost vessel, abandoned yet still operational. Then, as they delved deeper, the realization set in. This was no ordinary battleship. This was something else entirely. And the Dominion had just made the worst mistake of their existence. The Dominion shock troopers moved cautiously through the corridors, their armor enhanced, senses scanning for threats. But there were none. No crew, no defensive turrets, no automated resistance. The deeper they pushed into the ship, the more unnatural it felt. The walls were lined with strange, shifting panels, pulsing with faint energy signatures unlike anything they had encountered before. The interior was unlike any Terran warship they had boarded in the past. Then, the first squad vanished. No alarms, no gunfire, no signs of struggle, just silence. One moment their life signals blinked steadily on the Dominion command screens. The next, they were gone. High Lord Varkon clenched his jaw as the reports came in. Attempts to raise the missing squad failed. Their signals simply ceased to exist. It was impossible. Even in death, their armor should have transmitted a final burst of data, but it was as if they had never been there at all. Varkon ordered a second squad forward, instructing them to proceed with extreme caution. This time, their movements were accompanied by constant communication, broadcasting every step, every breath, back to the fleet. The troopers advanced down the dark corridors, the glow of their visor displays illuminating the unnatural metalwork. Then they saw it, the first sign of what had happened to the others. A body. Or rather, what was left of one. The armor was intact, but the soldier inside had been reduced to a withered husk, as if every ounce of life had been drained from him. His face was frozen in a silent scream, his body contorted in unnatural agony. A wave of unease spread through the Dominion forces. This was no ordinary weapon. No known energy field could do this. Something else was at work. Then, the ship itself awakened. Lights flickered to life in rhythmic pulses, a deep hum reverberating through the metal floors. Walls shifted, sealing corridors behind them, forcing the troopers forward into the unknown. They tried to retreat, but every exit closed before them. Panic set in. They had walked into a trap. From the shadows, figures emerged. Not human, not machine, something in between. Towering humanoid constructs, their metallic exoskeletons adorned with pulsating veins of crimson energy, stepped forward in perfect synchrony. They bore no weapons, but their presence alone radiated an overwhelming sense of power. The troopers opened fire, their plasma rounds scorching the air, striking their targets dead center. It did nothing. The figures advanced, unfazed, undeterred. Then, they raised their hands. A wave of unseen force surged through the corridor, slamming into the Dominion forces with an impact that sent them sprawling. The troopers screamed as their armor buckled, their bodies convulsing under an invisible pressure. Their life signals flickered and died, one by one. On the Dominion flagship, Varkon watched in horror. His best soldiers were being eradicated without resistance. He had never seen anything like this before. Then, his communications officer gasped. "Sir, we're receiving a signal from the Terran Battleship." Varkon's eyes narrowed. "Open the channel." For the first time, the Terran ship spoke. A single voice, calm yet resonating with something deeply unsettling, filled the bridge. "You should not have entered." Then, the ship fired again. A new barrage of kinetic rounds erupted from its massive cannons, but this time, they were different. The projectiles shimmered with dark energy, their trajectories impossible to predict, as if they were adjusting. Mid-flight, they struck Dominion ships with even greater ferocity, not just tearing through hulls but disintegrating them on impact. Entire cruisers vanished in bursts of energy. Their matter unraveled at a molecular level. The Dominion fleet attempted to regroup, but it was too late. The Terran battleship was no longer simply fighting, it was hunting. It moved with impossible speed for its size, closing the distance before Dominion ships could react. Close range. Weapons activated. Arc emitters lashed out with tendrils of crackling energy, melting armor like wax. Swarms of autonomous drones, sleek and silent, detached from its hull and surged towards the Dominion forces like a predatory cloud. The once mighty armada of the Dominion, undefeated and unchallenged, was being annihilated. And the worst part, the Terran ship had yet to take any real damage. Varkon's face was pale. This was not a simple warship. This was something else entirely. Something beyond human engineering, beyond Dominion understanding. The realization hit him like a death sentence. The Terrans had built something, or perhaps uncovered something, that defied the very nature of warfare itself. And now, it was too late to stop it. High Lord Varkon's mind raced as he watched his once invincible fleet crumble before his eyes. The Terran battleship was more than just a weapon. It was a force of nature, an entity beyond the Dominion's comprehension. Its weapons defied physics, its defenses adapted to every attack, and whatever dwelled within its dark corridors was beyond mortal understanding. He clenched his fists, his breath steady but cold with realization. The Dominion had spent centuries perfecting warfare, conquering species, eradicating resistance. Yet for the first time in history, they had found something they could not overcome. On the bridge of the Ravager of Light, his officers frantically called out updates. "We've lost over 70% of our fleet, High Lord. Their projectiles are rewriting gravitational fields before impact. We can't predict their paths. Our weapons have no effect. Sir, their hull is absorbing energy rather than deflecting it." Varkon exhaled slowly. His mind fought against the truth, but there was no denying it. They were outmatched, outclassed. The Dominion fleet had never encountered anything they could not at least damage. And yet, this Terran monstrosity stood in the midst of the burning wreckage, untouched, relentless. A final act of desperation remained. The Ravager of Light was equipped with the Dominion's ultimate failsafe, a planet-killer-class antimatter warhead, powerful enough to crack a world in half. It had never been used against a single ship before. But then again, no single ship had ever justified it. Varkon did not hesitate. He turned to his weapons officer. "Prepare the warhead." The officer paled. "Sir, if we detonate that at this range..." Varkon's gaze silenced him. There was no other option. The fleet was lost. If the Terran ship was not destroyed here, now, nothing would stop it. The warhead was primed. The countdown began. Across the battlefield, the Terran battleship suddenly stopped moving. It remained motionless in the void, as if watching, waiting. Then, before the Dominion fleet could process what was happening, the voice returned. An act of desperation. The simple words echoed through the Dominion's comms, chilling every soul aboard the remaining ships. Then, before the warhead could launch, the Terran battleship acted. For the first time, it revealed its true power. A rift opened before it. Space itself seemed to twist, bending as if something far greater lurked beneath its surface. Darkness poured forth, devouring the light of distant stars. The warhead, still attached to the Ravager of Light, was suddenly caught in an unseen grip. It hovered in place, then reversed course. Varkon's eyes widened. No! The antimatter warhead shot backward, slamming into the Dominion flagship before its shields could react. The detonation was instantaneous. A blinding flash consumed the Ravager of Light, vaporizing it in a sphere of annihilation. The Dominion's command was gone in a single heartbeat. What remained of the fleet broke. Some ships tried to flee, their captains abandoning all sense of loyalty or duty. Others simply drifted, their crews paralyzed with terror. The Terran battleship did not pursue. It did not need to. It had already won. As the light of the explosion faded, the ship remained, untouched, by the devastation. Then, without another word, it turned, vanishing into the void. The Dominion would remember this day. For the first time, their empire had been humbled. For the first time, their invincible fleets had been shattered. And worst of all, they had no idea what they had just fought. The Dominion was in chaos. News of the catastrophic defeat in the Kelrath expanse spread like wildfire, rippling through the ranks of military strategists, high-ranking officials, and even the Dominion's ruling council. Entire fleets had fallen, a High Lord had perished, and an unknown Terran warship had left the battlefield without so much as a scratch. No one had ever stood against the Dominion and survived, but now something far worse had happened. Someone had stood against them and won. The implications were staggering. The Dominion had built its empire on the foundation of absolute supremacy. Their technology had always been leagues ahead of their adversaries. Their fleets were invincible. Their rule was unchallenged. But that had changed in an instant, and, the worst part, they didn't even know what they had fought. The few surviving ships from the Kelrath expanse had been scoured for data. Fragments of corrupted footage, garbled sensor readings, and terrified distress calls were all that remained. The Dominion's brightest minds analyzed every detail, trying to decipher how a single Terran ship had outmatched an entire armada. They had expected to find some new experimental human technology, some hidden advancement they had overlooked. But the results were inconclusive. The ship's energy patterns defied logic. Its weaponry should not have been possible. Its ability to manipulate gravitational forces, disrupt matter, and override Dominion technology suggested something far beyond what any known species had developed. And then, one chilling realization emerged. The ship had not been built. It had been awakened. The Dominion's top intelligence operatives scoured records of human history, seeking any mention of a weapon like this. What they found was even more disturbing. There were no records of the Terrans ever developing a battleship of this scale, let alone one with such abilities. It was as if the vessel had simply appeared from nowhere, beyond the reach of known time and space. And then, the first reports came in. It had been seen again. Far from the Kelrath expanse, deep in an uncharted region of space near the fringe worlds, a Dominion outpost had picked up a signal, one that matched the strange, unreadable patterns of the Terran Battleship. Within hours, the outpost went silent. Every ship, every soldier, every piece of technology was gone, vanished without a trace. No distress calls, no debris. Only the eerie echo of the same cryptic transmission. "You should not have entered." Panic set in. The Dominion's ruling council convened in secret, debating their next move. Some argued that this ship, whatever it was, posed an existential threat and had to be eradicated at any cost. Others were not so sure. It had not pursued the fleeing remnants of the Dominion fleet in the Kelrath expanse. It had not continued its assault. Instead, it had disappeared into the void, only to resurface in another sector. It was searching for something. But what? And then, the unthinkable happened. The Terran Battleship appeared in Dominion-controlled space again. But this time it was not alone. From the depths of the void, more ships emerged. Black, angular, radiating the same eerie energy as the first. They bore no insignias, no identifiable markers. They did not respond to hails. They did not send threats. They simply advanced, silent and unstoppable. Entire fleets were scrambled to intercept them, throwing everything they had into the defense. Plasma lances, antimatter warheads, gravitic imploders, none of it mattered. The Dominion's most advanced weaponry was as effective as pebbles against a hurricane. Worlds burned, planets vanished. The Dominion's strongholds fell one by one, and finally, the truth became clear. This was not a Terran ship. It never had been. It was something older, something far worse. And now, it had returned. The Dominion's greatest minds had been wrong. This was never about the Terrans. The ship that had torn through the Kelrath expanse wasn't a Terran creation, nor was it controlled by any known human faction. The truth, horrifying in its implications, had been hidden beneath layers of misconception and fear. This ship wasn't an anomaly. It was the first of many. As the Dominion's fleets fell one by one, it became clear that the battleship was merely the vanguard of something far greater. The others had come now, sleek, towering behemoths of impossible design, moving with eerie precision through Dominion space. They did not act like an invading force. They did not follow the patterns of conquest, occupation, or expansion. They moved like reapers, cleansing the stars of everything in their path. And then the whispers began. Among the Dominion's scattered intelligence reports, intercepted communications from distant, desperate survivors, one word surfaced repeatedly: the forgotten. At first, it seemed like nonsense, the terrified ramblings of soldiers and refugees who had no way to comprehend the carnage. But as more worlds fell, as more Dominion warlords perished without so much as an escape, as entire systems were erased from existence, the reality became undeniable. The Dominion had awoken something that had no place in this era of the galaxy, something that had been buried, lost to the echoes of history. A race that had once ruled the stars, and had been erased from time itself. The forgotten were returning. In the last surviving Dominion archives, deep within the vaults of Corthon Prime, a team of researchers uncovered an ancient text, so old that even Dominion historians had dismissed it as myth. It spoke of an empire that existed before any known civilization, an empire of beings that had mastered the very fabric of the universe itself. They did not build ships, they grew them. They did not use weapons, they commanded the fundamental forces of creation. And then, suddenly, inexplicably, they had vanished. No records of their downfall existed. No warnings. No signs of a great war. No collapse from within. It was as if they had been erased from history, leaving nothing but traces. Ruined star systems, broken artifacts scattered across the void, and faint, unreadable echoes of their lost technology. Now, after countless millennia, they had returned. But why now? As Dominion space burned, its once glorious fleets reduced to nothing but wreckage floating in the abyss, a desperate alliance was formed. The remaining High Lords, the fractured remnants of Dominion command, reached out to the unlikeliest of allies, the Terrans. Throughout the ages, the Dominion had mocked them, dismissed them as primitive, a minor nuisance in the grand scale of the galactic hierarchy. But now, the Dominion was crumbling, and the Terrans, despite their supposed inferiority, had survived. Not only that, but their homeworld, Earth, remained untouched. It was a desperate gamble, but the Dominion had no choice. A delegation was sent, slipping past the chaos, evading the endless black vessels that patrolled the ruined sectors. They reached the Terran home system, expecting arrogance, resistance, or outright hostility. Instead, they were met with silence, and then, without warning, the Terrans spoke. "We have been preparing for this." The words sent a ripple of unease through the Dominion envoys. "How?" they demanded. "How could you possibly have known?" The answer was worse than anything they could have imagined. The Terrans did not create the forgotten. But they had known of their return for centuries. The Dominion delegation stood in stunned silence. The Terran commander before them was calm, his gaze unwavering as he revealed the unthinkable truth. "You think this is the first time they've returned?" he asked. The words sent a chill through the room. For centuries, the Dominion had believed themselves the supreme power of the galaxy, their fleets unmatched, their control unshakable. Yet, here stood the Terrans, supposedly inferior, technologically primitive compared to the might of the Dominion, claiming they had known about the forgotten all along. Varkan's successor, High Lord Sarek, clenched his fists. "Explain." The Terran commander exhaled slowly before responding. The forgotten did not vanish from history. They were sealed away. "By who?" one of the Dominion envoys demanded. The Terran's eyes darkened. "By those who came before us." The Dominion had always dismissed Terran history as inconsequential: tribal conflicts, endless wars, and a civilization that had barely unified before stepping into the stars. But now, a far deeper truth was being unveiled. Long before humanity had built its first interstellar warships, long before they had encountered other species, they had found something buried beneath the surface of their own homeworld. Something ancient, something that should never have existed on a planet as young as Earth. The first discovery was made deep in the ruins of the Mariana Trench, an impossible structure hidden beneath miles of crushing ocean pressure. It was unlike anything of human origin. Massive black spires, dormant and waiting, pulsing with energies beyond the reach of modern physics. At first, scientists believed it was an ancient Terran civilization, something lost to time. But as the decades passed and more structures were uncovered, on the Moon, on Mars, even hidden in the frozen wastelands of Europa, it became evident that these ruins were not human. And then, the warnings began. Strange signals, indecipherable at first, then slowly unraveling into whispers that spoke in no known language, yet were understood instinctively. Dreams of towering ships moving through the void. Entire solar systems devoured in darkness. A war that had taken place long before recorded history. A war that had nearly erased all life from existence. The last of the ancient messages had been clear. They will return. Prepare. For centuries, humanity had done just that. They had built their fleets not for conquest, but for survival. They had designed weapons not to fight their neighbors, but to stand against the nameless horrors that lurked in the shadows of history. And when the first forgotten warship awoke, they had been ready. The Dominion had believed the battle at the Kelrath Expanse was the first encounter. It wasn't. It was merely the first that the rest of the galaxy had seen. Sarek's expression darkened. "Then why didn't you warn us?" The Terran commander fixed him with an unflinching gaze. "Would you have listened?" Silence filled the chamber. The Dominion had spent centuries believing themselves to be the pinnacle of power, dismissing humanity as little more than a nuisance. If the Terrans had tried to warn them, they would have been ignored, or worse, silenced. But now, there was no room for arrogance. The Forgotten were here. The Dominion was collapsing. And only the Terrans had any knowledge of how to fight them. A holographic display activated, revealing a map of the galaxy. The black tide of forgotten vessels was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated, system after system falling into silence. Then, for the first time, the Dominion saw what the Terrans had known all along. A single point in the galaxy, hidden beyond the most desolate regions of space. A location humanity had kept secret, waiting for the moment it would be needed. The Terran commander gestured to it. "This is where we make our stand." Sarek narrowed his eyes. "What is there?" The commander's expression remained unreadable. "Last weapon from the war that erased them." The room went still. Humanity had not only known about the Forgotten, they had been guarding the key to ending them forever. Please subscribe my channel for more interesting stories like this.